Hi, everyone. My name is Stacy Acham. I'm a marketer manager here at BarTender by Sequel Scientific. Thanks for joining us for our webinar, Getting Started with BarTender for Small Businesses. Just to let you know, this presentation is in English, regardless of the language you heard when logging on. And this presentation is being recorded, so all registrants will receive access to the recording as well as the slides at a later date. And just to let you know, we will be taking questions at the end. So please feel free throughout the webinar to submit your questions. And during our Q&A, our hosts, Lee Stevens, our senior sales engineer, and Roberto Posado, sales engineer, will answer them. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Lee.
Thank you, Stacy, and good morning, everybody. Good morning, Roberto, and welcome to Getting Started with BarTender for Small Business. Today, we are going to be taking a look at just how easy it is to create a label in BarTender, and we're going to do that live and from scratch. And as Stacy said, we are going to have a Q&A session, so get those questions, type them in. Roberto and I love the Q&A session. The tougher, the better. So try and stump us, and we can have some fun and do some learning along the way. So let's get started, and welcome to BarTender. And as Roberto likes to say, it is a world of BarTender. BarTender has been around for a long time. Matter of fact, I'm originally from the telecommunications industry. I've been working here at Siegel now for 3.5 years, and I have discovered industries I did not know existed, but they not only exist, they use BarTender. Why? Because it's simply the best. We're the most widely used. It's easy. If you can build a PowerPoint, as you're going to see today, you can build a professional label. We have our sales and support is global. So if the sun is shining somewhere, there's BarTender support for you. We're #1 in Gartner, and pretty much you look at any top 25 industry list, and we are in the top 25 of all of them. Not only do we do labels, we also, and of course, barcodes, but we also do RFID tags, we do cards. You can do lots and lots of things with BarTender, not just labels. You can use BarTender to generate packing slips, shipping documents, ID cards, location identification labels, etc. A little bit about us. We've been around for more than 30 years and close to over 35 years now, actually, and we do labels. This is what we do. This is what we know. This is our DNA. We not only have BarTender, you also can get drivers by Siegel. Now, these are the drivers that you use for label printers. We have over 7,000 of them free that we develop in-house. They, of course, sync with BarTender, the best that you possibly can get, and they are, frankly, the gold standard in the industry. You can solve printing problems simply by loading drivers by Siegel. And guess what, guys? They're free. Go to our website, take a look at some of the drivers that we have. Now, I said earlier that the sun never sets on BarTender support, and that's true. We have support centers here in Bellevue, where Stacy and Roberto and I are, but as well in Madrid, in Taipei, and in Tokyo. So if it's a business day somewhere, you can get a hold of BarTender support. And we also have 7x24 support for people that need and want that kind of support. So briefly about BarTender, you're going to hear us talk a little bit about the editions. Now, with BarTender, you can start with the simplest edition we call Starter and work your way up. It's the same software and it just grows with you. So if you are a small one-person operation, maybe you start with starter or professional, which is what we're going to be looking at today. But whatever you develop there, you can grow as your operation grows all the way to being a multinational global spanning company. It's the same software, and so the growth is easy and goes along with you. In starter, this is really for people who are just starting out. They need basic labels. You're probably doing stuff from Excel. Your serialization is really simple, and you can support it up to 3 printers. We're going to be using professional today, in which we're going to, again, an easy upgrade. You have more databases you can tie into. We add RFID support, advanced serialization, data entry forms, a whole bunch more, and you can grow past 3 printers. You can grow to as many printers as you want. And we also, starting with BarTender 2022, which just got released about 2 months ago, we're also added in our print portal, which is our web-based printing application. So you can set BarTender up, and you won't even need to be in BarTender in order to generate a BarTender label. You can go to the print portal and use any browser to generate your labels. Quick eye chart here, just showing you the different features, and as you can see, starter is pretty basic. And then things start to grow as you move into professional and automation. But let's get to the real reason I suspect most of you have come here, and that is, let's make a label. How easy is this, and what are we going to do? So with that, I'm going to pop out of the presentation, and here we go. Guys, this is BarTender Designer. This is what you'll first see when you start. Actually, when you first start it, you'll see this. It's going to pop up with the new document wizard. And that's one of the things about BarTender that you're going to notice, is that we have a lot of wizards to help you step your way through. One of the things I like about BarTender is that it's what I call stumbleable. You can stumble your way through BarTender, although we do have great tutorials as well in our support portal and guides to help you with this. And you can even arrange for some one-on-one webinar training. But most of our customers, they just start working with it, and you're going to see how easy it is. Remember, you can do a PowerPoint, you can do BarTender. So what kind of label are we going to do today? Today we're going to do a label that is going to be for salads, because with all of the changes we've had and COVID and all of this, one of the things we thought is, a lot of people have been starting their own businesses, their own side gigs. And I've seen a lot of salads getting made and being offered in coffee shops, and they need labels. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to create a label that somebody could use to identify the salad in one of those plastic clamshell salad containers that you can pick up at the grocery store or a coffee shop. So let's get started with that. Now, notice when you start with BarTender, you get 2 options. You have a blank template, or you can select one from the library. Remember this library one. We're going to come back to that, because BarTender provides you with well over 100 different predefined templates that you can use as the basis for a label. They're fully functional. You can you take it and modify it, or, as we're going to do later, you can copy parts of something that's predefined and move it into yours. So we try and make it really easy to build even sophisticated objects in your label by giving you examples of those objects that you can then copy, and you'll see how that works. We're going to start with this as blank. Now, in this case, I already knew what kind of label I wanted to do, and I know my printer. I've got a Zebra ZT620, pretty common, and that's a printer that can print 6-inch wide labels, which is good because that's what I want to do. I need a wide label that's also going to be long. I can define my label, or I can use some existing stock. And I'm going to come down. Notice we have here existing stock labels from lots and lots of manufacturers. I'm going to pull one here from Zebra. Let's see. I'm looking for, notice how I'm just going along and it's showing me the label over here. I'm looking for my 6x8. Let's see. Normally I have this pre-picked, but I must have lost it this morning. Da, 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 da. We're going to find it. Let's see here. 4x6, 6x4. I think we're getting there. I remember it being a 2000. Ah, okay. We will. All right. You know what? Instead of continuing to click through this, I'm going to just change this to specify, and we'll see how that works. So I'm going to do a single item per page, and I'm going to define the area. I'm going to say, yeah, I've got unused width on about a 20th of an inch on each side. It's going to be rounded, and I'm going to make it 6 inches wide, but it's going to be 8 inches tall. Notice how this immediately reflects that. And the orientation is portrait and landscape and so on. So I've got a lot of control here. And there we go. Now, what I'm going to do here is I want to pull in an image, because while my printer's black and white only, I want color. And so I went and I had labels pre-printed so I could get a color background. This is really, really common. And I had a friend who created an image for my label, for my logo, and I sent that in, and they went ahead and they did the preprint, and I want to use that so I can use it as a design element, but I want to make sure BarTender knows not to actually print from it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get this file that I have, and I'm going to go to the folder where I have this. Here we go in the webinars and label design, and here we go. So it's my green circle label background, and I had it designed to fit my label, and notice it pops up in blue. So I can change, it's just going to be there to give me a guide. Other things I can do with this is I could come back and I could say, you know what, this is actually a picture, but we're going to keep it as a template image. And and I can remove it. So you can do all these different things with BarTender here. We're going to do this as a background image in this case, and I'm going to come here to an embedded image. I'm going to tell it that it's pre-printed, and I'm going to go ahead and get the same file. There we go. So this, I can now see all of the color. I can see what this is going to look like at the end. But since this image is pre-printed, BarTender will only show me all of this if I'm in a preview mode. But when it comes to the actual printing, it's not going to try and print the screen, which is good because I have a black only printer. So here we go. I'm going to finish, and there is our template. So now it's about putting onto this template the objects that I need. Now, what I've done is we're going to connect to an Excel file because I've already gone through and created a lot of the information that I need, and I put it into an Excel file. And if I bring the Excel file in, you're going to see this field here, data entry fields, all of a sudden expand out. And that's going to let me make it, it's going to make it very easy for me to add elements from the data onto the label. And to do that, all I'm going to do is connect this template to a database. And I can do that a number of different ways. I've got this little, looks like an oil drum. That's a database connection. Or I could go to File, and I could do a database connection here. There's not just one way to do something in BarTender. There are always lots of ways of doing something in BarTender. So here we can see some of the different databases that BarTender is able to directly connect to and talk with. And pretty much, if it's a data source out there, BarTender can talk to it. In our case, we're going to go ahead with Microsoft Excel. Notice I could have done this as Excel online as well. And now I'm going to come back and we'll go into the folder where I have the data file and green circle salads, and I'm going to say next. And in this case, previewing 30 records is fine because I don't have that many. I've got about 7 different salads set up. I only have one sheet. If there were more than one, I'd be able to select the sheet from here. The first row does have field names. And I'm going to say yes and finish. And there we go. Now, I could add a lot more in here. I could customize it very easily. I could do joins. I could do all kinds of things. The fact is, though, is that the vast majority of us, we keep it simple. So here's what it kind of looks like a little bit. You can see I've got the product name, the G10, the ingredients. I've, information that I'm going to want to put on my salad. And so I'm going to click OK, and boom, here are all of the database fields. Now this makes it really great because with BarTender, you can drag and drop. So let's start with what do we want on this label? Well, how about if we start first thing with the name of the label? So I'm going to look here, I'm going to find product name, and I'm just going to click, I'm going to drag it. Now notice immediately, BarTender actually gave me a centering line there, which is really cool. I'm going to put this up there a bit. Okay, that's pretty nice. Excuse me there. But it's kind of on the small side, and I'd really like a different font. Now, BarTender defaulted to the Zebra Triumvirate because that's a built-in font to the Zebra printer, but you're not limited to that. So if we come in here to the fonts, notice BarTender includes a lot of different fonts, including some of its own special symbols for different industries. So if you are in a specific industry that has its own unique symbols, then you can actually find those symbols here in BarTender's Siegel font directory and just build that in naturally. So I'm going to come and I'm going to use, I like the Segoy, and we'll just do, say, a Segoy black for the font there. And I'd like it to be bigger. And so I'm going to say, well, let's try 24 point. Yeah, that's looking better. But notice what happened. It had been centered. Now it's off-centered. Why did that happen? Well, if you look close, you're going to see that there are these 8 circles around the box, and one of them has little points coming out of it. Those little points mean that is the anchor point. BarTender knows that if this object, this text, gets bigger or smaller, this point will always stay where it is. So it will get bigger by going to the right. It'll get bigger by going down. It will never get bigger by going to the left of that point or going above that point. Okay, well, that explains that. But Can I move it? Yes. So a lot of different ways. I want to get now to the properties of this object. And I can do that a number of different ways. I could just come over here to the object value. Notice when I created it, it gave the, put it here under object value. Or I could right click on it and select properties. But oftentimes I just double click and boom, there's my properties window. So here I can do all kinds of things to this. Now, one of the first things I like doing is I come up here to the name of the object, and I'm going to give it a name that I'm going to recognize. And in this case, I'm going to call it salad name. So later, as you're going to see, it's going to change under the object value as I move on. And there, now I know what that object is, and it makes it easier for me to find. And I can control a lot of things about this. Notice, again, in BarTender, there's always more than one way of doing something. I had been changing the font and everything from there, but I could also do it from here. And I actually have a few more easily selectable options if I need them. In this case, I don't really, but it's there and it's nice to know that. Text format. Well, right now, this is not going to word wrap, but I could actually make a change on that where it would wrap to fit. And notice it just automatically started to wrap. In my case, I want the label to always be on just one line, so I'm going to take the wrap to fit off. I can also set my tabs and the layout standards, etc. I can also even make this bend and curve. So there's a lot of different things that you can do here in the just in the text format. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to go to position, because position is where I get to define a lot about this object, including that anchor point. So notice the anchor point is top left. What I'd really like is for it to be in the center, but at the top, because I want this to expand in both directions and down, but never up, because I never want it to expand into this pre-printed area. So I just come here and I'm going to say top center. And lo and behold, there we go. Now that anchor point is in the top center, and I can move this over, and there we go. And matter of fact, if we look down here, you'll see I've got record 1 of 7 and all of this. So I'm actually connected to my data. If I flip through some of my records, notice how BarTender is now automatically expanding, but keeping it centered as I move along. If I go up here to font and I decide I want this bigger, I can go to like that. And again, it expanded widthwise and down, but it didn't go above it. 48 is probably a little too big. So here we go. So I'm going to show you another neat little trick, because I'd like the name of this salad to be as big as possible. So what you want to do is you go along until you find your biggest text field, and it looks like it's a toss-up between the butternut winter squash salad and my last one, the smoking salmon niçoise salad. So I'm going to go back to the butternut. That's my biggest one, and that looks pretty good. But if it's smaller, if it's shorter, I'd like it to appear a little bit bigger. So for that, I've got a tool here called Autofit. And with Autofit, since I've now got this defined as the biggest it can be, if I click here, notice it lets me set a range of different sizes that it will let the text adjust to, so it will always try to fit inside of that box. Now, I would never want it smaller than what it's currently at, so I'll say minimum is 100%. Maximum, I'll let this get as much as 50% bigger. And that's all it took. I'll close that now. Now watch what happens if I start to move through. Oops, I need to center this. Notice again, more than one way of doing anything. There we go. So it's actually now, if you watch, it will slightly increase the size of the label as we move along so that everything fits. So it's a nice feature, the Autofit. Let's move on. So what's the next thing that I need on this label? Well, probably the price, because people want to know how much they're going to pay for something. So here I have it as MSRP, manufacturer's suggested retail price, and I'm going to bring it over to here. Now notice again that anchor point. This will expand to the right and down, and the truth is I don't want it to expand that way. I'd rather have the anchor point down here. Well, we already know how to do this. In this case, I'm just going to right click and go to properties. I'm going to go to position, and I'm going to tell it I want it on the bottom right. There we go. And that lets me position this exactly where I want it. Notice BarTender gave me a warning red line there. If I push it too much farther to the right, it's not going to print. And I can make an adjustment here as well. I should do that, and I'll do that. And now I see I need to adjust maybe my font a touch. We'll come back to a 26. There we go. So this is the beauty of BarTender. What you see is what you get. By seeing how things look and working from both my biggest and smallest values, I can make sure that the labels are always going to look the way I want them to because I'm seeing what they're actually going to print out like. So let's go back here to the price because I'm using this in the US and I want to have a dollar symbol in front of that. Now, there are a lot of ways I could do it. I could come here to the data source and I could add another data source in just like this, and I'd make it embedded data. And then I could, where it says sample text, I could simply do a dollar sign and a space, and there we go. And now as I move through and you see the different prices, it's automatically putting the dollar sign there. Remember what I said? More than one way of doing things in BarTender. So another way I could do this is I'm going to delete that data source. So that's an important note here, by the way. I can have more than one data source in an object. So I can actually take data from different places and group them together. You're going to see me using that more later on. I'm going to use instead on this data source, which notice it shows me that it's a database field called MSRP. I'm going to do a data type. Now in BarTender, it defaults all data sources to text, but you don't have to keep it that way. You can have your data source be any one of about 9 or 10 different types of data, including currency. When I select currency, notice I've got it set for English in the United States, but I could have it be for India. I could have it be for Denmark. I could pick any one of these. I could have it for English in Canada. And I could have it for being French in Canada, which notice the French in Canada works differently. But BarTender, because I told it, hey, this data type is for this location, it automatically made the change. So we're going to come back here. But that's really cool. I didn't even have to add the data source. BarTender automatically knows, and I'm able to control how this works. Now, in this case, I don't want to show a leading zero. I don't have them, but if I did, I wouldn't want that to show. I do want the digit grouping separator. In this case, that's going to be the dots and the commas. Other places use other things. So BarTender, this is why we're used worldwide. You can internationalize your labels quickly and easily, not only with data types, but also with fonts, languages, etc. So we now have that correctly done. I'm going to go ahead and label this as price, so I know which object that is. There we go. Cool. And again, notice I've got all of these objects over here, and that's just another way of me getting to it. So always more than one way of getting to something in bartender. What else do I need? Hey, bartender, we do barcodes, right? Yeah, I need a UPC code on this to make it easy. And I went ahead and I contacted my GS1 supplier, a source, and I got a G10 for my salads. And each salad has a different G10. So if you don't know what a G10 is, I recommend you go to the GS1 website and read up on it. But that's that number that appears below the UPC. And there's actually a lot more to it, but it's what allows me to make a salad and give it to somebody to sell. And when they scan it, they're going to know what item that is, and they're going to know what the price is. So how do I do that? Well, I do have G10 here, and if I pull it straight out, we can see the number, but that's not a barcode, is it? That's just the number. If we look up here, we're going to see a little barcode, and this is our barcode tool. And with Bartender, we support every standard type of barcode that you can imagine. As you can see, we have over 115 symbologies and more than 200 different varieties of those symbologies already built for you. So if you're in a particular industry or you have a particular application, Bartender already has some barcodes set up for you that you could just drag and drop at this point. Now, Bartender will also always show you the latest ones you've been using because, well, it makes it easier to get. And that's what I'm going to do here. So I'm just going to pop back and notice you can see some of the different barcodes I've been using lately. And here's the UPCA, which is used here in the US and Canada. And I'm going to pop it in and cool. That font looks a little too thick. Remember, I kind of made Bartender defaulted to the Segoy Black. But you know what? For barcodes, I want something that's going to be nice and easily read. And so that's probably Arial. I'll keep it regular. Notice it's already changing the font as I do this. And 10 point is a nice readable size. So because if, you know, we want people to be able to type the number in if that's the only way they can do it. And there we go. Now, notice I've got an anchor point here. And again, I want to think about what direction do I want this to expand? And in this case, I want it to expand up and to the left. So I really want the anchor point down over here in the bottom right. So I'm going to come to position again, and I'm going to go to bottom right. There we go. Now, if this barcode needs to expand, it'll expand in the right direction. And I'm going to shrink this down a little bit just so it looks a little easier and nicer. I'll use the, there we go. And I now have that in the bottom corner. Great. We're getting there, except one problem. This is the G10 number for this salad, but that's not the number showing here. How do I get this G10 number into this barcode symbol? Again, Bartender, more than one way. I could do it by opening up the properties here, coming to the data source and going, oh, I want, instead of embedded data, which is static, I want to instead go to a database field, and then I could come here and I could look and I could find the G10 number, and that would take care of it. But you know what? There's an easier way. So what I also can do is, since I already have this barcode object on there, I can come over here to this data source, the G10 number. I can pull it and I'll just drop it on there. And Bartender automatically took that and made it the data source for my label or for my barcode. And it knows exactly how to split things up. So if I come in here and I open up properties and we take a look, the data source is now the G10 field. So you can't get easier than drag and drop, guys. This number now matches, and as I go through the different salads, you'll see that my G10 number changes as my salad changes. Cool. That means I don't need this anymore, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. And I'm now pretty much getting there. I'm on my way. Other things I might want to have in here, well, probably the ingredients. So I'm going to find my ingredients and I'm going to pull them over. Okay, that's pretty big. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to say, you know what? Let's make this align to the left. Whoa, went off the screen. Let's find where it went. Went over here. Again, notice that anchor point. I'm just going to, so notice how I can just kind of go off the screen a little bit, pull things in. So if something jumps off your screen, you can go and get it. Let's shrink this down in size from 24 point, we'll go maybe to 12. We'll get rid of the Segoy black and let's do maybe Sitka text, just so it looks a little bit different. And notice BarTender's just automatically adjusting. All I'm doing here is, oops, I slipped on my mouse button. I'm just moving things until they look kind of right to me. Now, in this case, I'd like to have in here the word ingredients or maybe contains. Let's go with ingredients. And I'll do a colon. And if I open up this font, notice what I did. Always more than one way of doing something in BarTender. I could have created that by doing the right click and do a new data source and gone through it that way. Or as I did here, I just said, here's where I'd like to have it. And I started typing it. I can also highlight this part, right click, go to the properties. Sorry, there we go. And I'll make that bold. And that makes the whole thing bold. So I'll just go back to regular here. And I'm going to make just ingredients bold. So there we go. I've got the ingredients all listed out. Now, I also need to warn people if there are any allergens in here because, you know, some people can't handle nuts or peanut butter or, something else. So I have a list of those things as well over here that I've put together. And let's see, allergens. So I can pull my allergens down. And my chef salad does contain wheat. And in this case, I'm going to open this up and I'm going to add in the other way I was showing you just by coming in here and saying new, and I'll keep it as embedded. I'm going to say contains, and there's wheat. And I'm going to add a few more things. I'm going to do a border. I'll do it with a rectangle so it kind of stands out. Let's make this also a different symbol or a different wheat font. I mean, we'll go to Tahoma so it again stands out a little bit. I don't want people getting triggering an allergy because they're eating my salad. And so here, I'll probably decide I'm going to take this to just regular, and I'm going to only bold the contains. There we go. Contains wheat. And I think that's looking pretty good. You know, this is something you always want to do is parse through your data just to see how things look as you go. And you know what? It's looking good. This ingredients thing though is not working. I have the positioning is based to center. I want this actually to be based more up here. So I'm going to do that really quick. We'll go to properties and go to position, and I'm going to make that top left. So there we go. That now works that way. And I'll leave the allergens where it is. In an advanced technique, there is a way of grouping these two together in their own table and having it expand, but we don't have time to get into that. I want to try and give you guys plenty of time for questions, so I hope you're adding in questions. Okay, so we're almost done, but I promised you I would show you what you can do with those predefined templates. And that's what we're going to do next, because the other thing that people want when they get something at a store is they often want to know, hey, what's the nutritional value of this food that I'm buying? Now, I have all of the data, but that's a pretty complex table to build if you look at the ones that the FDA recommend. And that could take me a lot of time. Well, in BarTender, we try and make it as easy as possible. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to say, let me do a new template. And you'll notice when I'm done, BarTender is just going to create another tab up here. In this case, I'm going to go to select from library. Okay. And notice it then goes to a predefined templates. These are all different templates that BarTender gives you when you get it, that you can then use immediately. And if you are doing shipping, and let's say you're shipping to Walmart, we have the pallet labels all ready for you. If you're doing UPS, domestic, uh, oh, this one's telling me that it was designed for a different printer. I want it to continue to use this printer. Okay, there we go. So you've got that. So you have all of these different templates that you can use, including, as I come through here, one for food production and processing. And notice I could have pulled an example of one of these allergens down. I've got my Australian food origin, etc. There's a double one, but I happen to like this one, the simplified display. So I'm going to select that. We're going to finish it. Now notice BarTender created a separate one here. I can just go back to what I've been working on just by clicking on that tab there. And this is what I want. And, you know, there are lots of different objects in here. I could build it, or I could copy it. And then I come back to this one, and I'm just going to come here and I'm going to paste. And there we go. How easy is that? Let's get this looking nice. I'm going to come here. Okay, that looks good. Let's see how things look. Oh, that's great, except of course, the values in this table aren't changing. Well, that's because they haven't been linked yet to my database fields. And we can do that pretty simply just by coming to one of the objects. Let's pick calories, and I'll double click on it. And notice it tells me here's data source. So I'm going to click on the data source. I'm going to click on the tool next to the type of data. And I'm going to say, you know what, instead of being embedded, I want you to get it from a database field, and I want you to get it from my calories database field. And I'll do finish, and there we go. The calories now show 398. And as I move through my salads, the calories change. And then I would simply do that for the rest of these items and make those necessary changes. The last thing I want to do is green circle salads is the name of my salads, but my company name is actually something different. It's Waldorf and Sons. And I'd like to have my logo in there. So I'm going to come up here to my picture tool, And notice I can pull in pictures from a wide range of different sources and ways. In this case, I'm going to grab it from a file. And here's my Waldorf & Sons logo. And I'm just going to put it here. And I'm going to just make it a little bit bigger. And then maybe I'll add in some text. We'll just come here and say normal. And I'll come in here and say a product of, and we'll center it just so it looks kind of nice, and I'll center it. Notice BarTender even lets you know the center line between two objects, so you get it centered nicely, a product of Waldorf & Sons. And there we go. Now, how is this going to look? Well, first thing to keep in mind is this green. This is pre-printed on the label. I can see what it BarTender will show me what it's going to look like if I do a print preview, because BarTender says, oh, I know that this is actually pre-printed on the label, so I'm going to let you see what this looks like. And so now I can actually step through and see all of the different salad labels I've created. So I'm ready to go with that. But I want to actually print this. And when it does print, BarTender should not print this green. So we're going to go ahead and use the printer tool, and I'm going to tell it to go to this zebra. Now, I don't actually have this zebra printer here. I've got this set up and paused, and I'll show you in a moment where that is. So I'm just going to move it aside because I have these all ready. So here's my printer queue for Zebra, and I'm going to use another tool that comes with automation edition called a reprint console, because it can actually show me what gets printed, and that's really cool. And so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a print here, and we'll just say, yeah, print all of them. I would actually be able to select individually if I wanted to, just from here. In more advanced things, what Roberto will show you tomorrow is how you can actually build a data entry form as well to control what you have in the printing. But in our case, we're keeping this pretty simple. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to click print. And we should see, oh, I got the wrong one here. Let me pull up the correct one. I have two different Zebra 620 ones. There we go. That's where it is. So here we can see that BarTender will default to the name of the template. If I'd have named this differently, it would have given it a different name, but it printed those pages. And if I want to see what that looks like, I can come here to my reprint console. And here we have the print job. Notice it printed 7 items. And there we go. And we can actually step through and see all of the different prints. So in about 30 minutes, we have gone from not having any labels to having labels that look nice, professional, and are ready to print. That's how easy BarTender is to use. Now, there's obviously more to BarTender than just that. And here's where I'm going to pop back to the presentation. Other labels you can create include warning labels for chemicals, addresses, the nutrition you saw me use, etc. And labels that we don't even have on here. It's endless. BarTender also does RFID, and that's important in today's supply chain. So if the printers can do RFID, then BarTender can not only print the label, it can encode the RFID for you as well. So besides that, what else do you get? Well, you get your own portal for where you're able to manage your licenses. You can do more downloads. BarTender's licensed by printer, That means you can install BarTender as many times as you want and have as many users as you want, as long as they're all sharing the same printers. So there's no restriction on that, and that's really great. You can also upgrade your license through here. If you start off with Starter and you go, oh, you know what, I really want some of those things I can do in Professional, you're able to use that. Our support, I already talked about. If the sun is shining and it's a business day, you got live support somewhere in the world. And you also have premium support available for 7x24 support. You need to be in automation or enterprise edition for those. Quick start sessions, if we have, as I said earlier, a lot of help in our support portal, tutorials, etc. But if you want that one-on-one, we can set up a 2-hour training for you, as well as providing consulting on more advanced and sophisticated installations and systems. You can find the help and support I was talking about on support.siegelScientific.com, our support center, including community forums and technical guides. It's a wealth of information. It's just amazing. So with that, Roberto, what kind of questions do we have today?
Great job, Lee. I enjoyed very much walking through the setup wizard and showing how, we've done it in multiple webinars, but this time you're not using a specific template. You did it through the wizard. So I like that a lot. And then we do have multiple questions. A question that, has been asked several times here. How do you export the CPL code for that label that you created? Could you show them how to do that, Lee?
Sure. Yeah,
Please.
we can do that. Let me pop out of the presentation here. Okay, so if I wanted this as ZPL code, I would come here to File, click, I'm going to go to the print. Now, there are actually a couple of different ways. I can come here to print, and I could do a print to file instead, just by clicking here. And in that case, it will go ahead and do a print, and notice it's going to ask me where I want to put it. And so in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and say, let's put it in, I've got a temp file here, and we'll call this,
Just call it test, Lee.
yeah, webinar
test.
test, and we'll do the save, and save, do the print. Okay, now let me open up my folders, and we'll come here, come down, oh, let me sort by name, temp, okay, and there's webinar test print. And if you want to see what ZPL code looks like, I'm going to go ahead and open this with Notepad+. And that's what ZPL code looks like.
Thank you,
So,
Lee.
yeah. So, yeah, a little hard to, it's kind of fun to look at that and realize, oh, this is this is what's telling the printer to print this.
To do all of that.
To do all of that. It's kind of fun to look at it that way.
Now, I do have another question, and this one is another one that we are able to tackle showing it. Somebody wants to know how to serialize a barcode, and I do see a barcode at the bottom,
right.
the UPC.
Okay.
We could serialize that barcode for you and demonstrate that. If you could do that for them today, Lee, please.
Yeah. So now G10, here I'm going to do this a little bit differently, because we'll serialize a barcode, but I'm not going to do this one because you actually don't want to serialize a UPC code. UPC codes are specific to the G10s. So we're going to pick one that you might do a serialization on, which is, say a code 128. Okay. So this is a type of barcode that is often used for serialization. So here what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up and I'm going to go to the data source, because it's the data source that we're actually going to serialize. And if I come here to transforms, we've done some data type stuff, but another way of altering the data that and how it appears is by using transforms, and I can do all kinds of different things with it, as you see here. And right here, third from the bottom, is serialization. So if I click on serialization here, okay, I've got don't serialize, which is my default. I can also do an increment. Now, in this case, this is all numbers. And so I would probably say, oh, I want to increment it just by numeric. I want to increment it by 1. I'll increment it at every event. And these are how many copies of every serial number I want to do. And if I do a preview of the sequence, you can see it starts off with 7-8, moves to 7-9, and so on. So we have a lot of tools here to help you out with that. And if I go ahead and do that, as I step through here, we ought to see when it comes to the actual print that would actually do, that's when it would actually increment. Mm-hmm. So that's how easy serialization is. Now, in Starter, the serialization options are really limited. You're only going to be able to increment by 1. With Professional, I could actually have my incrementing be coming from a database field or from a named database. I can make different constants. I can actually build a sophisticated one, because oftentimes a serial number is actually 3, 4, 5 different pieces of information brought together, and they are each incrementing under different rules. And so because I can do this by data source, I would be able to do that. If I could add another data source here, for example, and so this one, let's say this one is just letters, ABC. I'm able to do my transform and go serialization. And I can say, yeah, I want to serialize this one, but this is going to be alphabetic only. And it's going to increment by 3. And then I can also do it when this is going to actually increment. And this might be only for every print job as opposed to every record, for example. And in that case, it would, so the ABC would increment at a different rate than the numbers. So you can do some really sophisticated serialization that way.
Thank you, Lee. We do have another question. And it's an easy question. Do you have to design each label for each type of printer? We have a Honeywell MP43 and a Honeywell MP4i. Does the same label have to be created for each printer?
The answer is a qualified no. And I'll say qualified because those are different printers. The key is understanding what those differences are and to approach the design in such a way as BarTender will be able to easily adjust to fit the different printers. If you want, send us an email and we can give you a technical paper that I wrote once called One Label Many Printers, that talks about the different ways of trying to have one label be able to look the same regardless of the printer it goes to. Some of it you have already seen. Some of it is simply making sure that you have that anchor point in the right place. But it's also thinking about what are the capabilities of the printer. Now, I don't happen to know those 2 printer capabilities offhand, but you always want to design the label for the printer with the lowest print quality. Because if you're going to make a change, your label will tend to look, if it looks good on a low print, on a low dot per inch printer, it's going to look great on a high dot per inch printer. but it doesn't necessarily work the other way. So that's probably the first and most important thing, is what are the different dot pitches for these printers? The second thing that you always want to take into account is that if the printers are from the same manufacturer, they're probably going to be very similar. But if they're from different manufacturers, you're going to have some different results because those printers operate differently. And you're going to need to probably do a little experimenting to see which one is the one you want to design to, so that you get the best fidelity on the other one as well. Nothing replaces actually going ahead and doing it. Now, what you can do is use the reprint console, and you set up simulated printers like I have here, and you could actually see the changes that might be necessary. The biggest changes you will tend to see are going to be in the barcodes themselves, and sometimes in the images. And I'll just talk about the barcodes. The barcode BarTender will always adjust the size of the barcode so that it remains valid regardless of the printer.
Lee,
And
we have
we'll
time
get
for
into
two more
detail on
questions.
that.
I
So
want
yeah,
to answer these two questions
sorry.
because they're easy. So the first one, can we import existing QR codes from data source, or BarTender has to generate them? So you have both options. You could create a list with all of the barcodes, the codes that you need inside of the QR code, and you could import them that way. Or you could have BarTender with serialization create the QR codes, generate the codes for you. Now, the last question I want to answer today, Lee, is can you print one record or multiple records at the same time? And since we have that database connected, could you show him once you click print, when it
Sure.
brings up the dialog where you're able to select the multiple records or just one?
So here we
Thank
have
you,
the
Lee.
queried records. I could do selected at print time. And when I do my print, sorry, I still have it going print to file. Let me
Yeah,
change that. So we'll take off the print to file. So I have print at select at print time. I can select my records here, and notice I can just check these off. So I could actually say, you know what, I want this one, and this one, and we would go ahead and do the print, and we'll do a print preview, make it quick and easy. Notice because I said print at print time, it selected print time, it also pulled this up. So we'll now add the curried mango in. And here we go. We got a total of 4. And there's a curried mango, the quinoa, and the niçoise salad. So that's an easy way of doing it. And it's just part of the print.
it's part of the print. It's so easy to accomplish it. And Lee, what an amazing webinar today. So much information. Everyone, we will send out this recording. So wait for an email from us. And I enjoyed the webinar today, Lee. It was great. Good
Oh,
job.
thanks. Thank you. Okay, Stacy, do you want to take us out?
Sure, I sure can. Well, yes, thank you everyone for joining us for today's session. And like Roberto mentioned, we will be sending out an email with the access to the recording as well as the slides. And thank you so much for joining us. We will be having a session next month. And yes, thank you so much. Have a good one.
Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.